Hi, my name is Gary Richard. I'm a multi-patented inventor, and I took those skills and came up with a format which we're going to be talking about today. After Molly Bish was abducted, it really got my attention in that dirt road that they showed leading to Cummings Pond in West Warren, Massachusetts. It haunted me. And then when Elizabeth Smart was taken out of her own bed, can you imagine that? A child taken out of their own bed with her sister in the same room and her parents in the next room. So I decided I needed to do something about child abduction. And the key to abduction is the vehicle. How do we identify a vehicle? It's supposed to be the license plate, but that system is broken. You know, back in 1903, when Massachusetts was the first state in the country to put license plates on vehicles, if you were the first in line, you got number one. That's, you know, when the speed limits were typically 15 miles an hour and had dirt roads, and a car couldn't even exceed 30 miles an hour, and we certainly didn't have super highways and paved roads. But now with the number of people that we have in our population and the number of vehicles that we have, the numbers have just gotten too large, and cognitively we just can't grasp that information. So I decided to do something about it, and it's been a heck of a journey. And fortunately, along the way here, I had the wonderful pleasure of meeting the gentleman to my right, to your left, Jay Gardner. And Jay, please introduce yourself here and your background.
Thanks, Gary. So I started my career in the city of Worcester with progressive responsibility. I became the Director of Public Health in Worcester, and then eventually Commissioner of Health and Human Services. Did that for a good number of years, and really our singular focus and top priority was the health and safety of the community. After that, I went on, and you referenced Molly Bish. So I became the executive director for the Molly Bish Center at Anna Maria College in Paxton, Massachusetts, a small liberal arts school just north of Worcester. And if the viewers aren't familiar with that, this is a young girl who, on her second day of being a lifeguard at this little Mother's Beach, right? She was dropped off, 16 years old. She was excited about being a lifeguard. She was following in her brother John's footsteps, and she was tragically abducted. What really highlights this story is that her mother, Maggie, who was really become such an advocate for child protection, she was there and she saw the vehicle the day before. She was able to describe the vehicle, the color, the type. What she didn't get is the license plate, so she reached down in her pocketbook because she knew she couldn't cognitively remember that. In that time, the car drove away, and to this day, it's the most expensive, the most lengthy search and criminal event in Massachusetts history. The most expensive and lengthy. To this day, it hasn't been solved. Right here we are, over 20 years later. Breaking this down simply is license plate formatting in 1903, right? It's not built on any science, right? It just evolved, right? We had to, the reason the plate is there to instantly identify a vehicle, but that's not what it does, right? In this formatting of alphanumeric, 6 in Massachusetts, 7 in some states, we're up to 8 in some states, it doesn't cognitively align, right? So we have to, let's at least concede the obvious, that the license plate, that real estate on the front of the car, its purpose is for public safety, but that's not what it does. It generates taxes.
If you see something, say something, right?
So that's what public safety tells us at every time. We need the community's help. But in effect, what we've done is put blindfolders on the community. They're not able to recognize that license plate. They can't retain that and then be able to give that back to the police so they can do something about it. So we understand that we have a system that is broken. Police at every level, international police, local chiefs of police, district attorney's office, they've all agreed that the system does not work well, right? It does generate funds, but that's not what it's for. It's not, for public safety. That license plate is there to instantly identify any culture, any age. You should immediately be able to say what that license plate is. Now, if you're standing behind it, maybe, or sitting behind it in a car, you can probably write that down. But you mentioned child abduction, but this goes so much further. The hit and run, the pedestrian accident, the drunk driver, the road rage issue, all of those issues, the stolen vehicle, that really impact everyone in our society. At every point, someone has intersected with that event.
Yeah, because the statistics show that 70% of all crime involves the usage of a motor vehicle, yet less than 1% of the time they can glean that information and report it. Right. Far less than 1%.
So something that works less than 1% of the time, let's agree that's broken, right? Your car works 1% of the time, that is in fact broken. Your phone, whatever that is, that system is broken. So we understand that it's not delivering what it's intended to do. Now the next equation, the next piece of that is, can we do something about it? Can we improve upon that? And unilaterally says, of course we can. We just have to identify that there's a problem, and then what are the dividends? What are the dividends for that? Can you imagine if we were able to instantly identify? And you mentioned a couple cases, Holly Peranian, Molly Bish, Elizabeth Smart, but there are literally tens of thousands of those. And those are the ones that we hear about, right? The police say, we need the community's help. The measure of success in public safety is how well we inform, educate, and engage with the community. There's been tremendous progress in communication, right? Internet, cell phone, cameras, but we literally have put blindfolds on eyewitnesses, as in the data point that you mentioned. The eyewitness that's not able to get the vehicle identification to uniquely identify that car.
I believe this is somewhat accurate. J.C. Dugard's stepdad saw the abduction. Other people saw the abduction. He chased the vehicle on a bicycle. The car is right in front of him. The license plate is virtually under his nose, but in a time of trauma. He could not recall. But when you ask people what their own license plate,
right?
I mean, this shows how broken it is. The vast majority of people who get in and out of the same vehicle day in and day out, and they cannot remember their own license plate number. And so, at the hotels and the motels, when they say put in the registration, fill out the form, you see them go out to their car, right, get the information and write it down and bring it in. What does that tell you? Yeah. That we're intelligent people. It's not based on intelligence. But if we as adults can't do that,
right, what
chance does a child have?
Right.
This was recommended for ages 2 and up. Yeah. We learn about symbols, and actually letters and numbers are symbols, but the most basic ones here. And that's why when I came up with this system called EZID, it uses universally recognizable symbols that we embed in one symbol into each one of the general issue license plates. It doesn't displace vanity plates, low number plates, or specialty plates. So it's only for the general issue that are just random numbers and letters. And by adding symbols, it gives you that retrieval cue. And like the New England College of Optometry, they did a study and got national acclaim when they tested using that symbol, embedded into a number of random numbers and letters, license plates, and all they did was say, what was the President of the United States back in, or they show a picture like that, and that was enough to disrupt the memory of the numbers and the letters, but they remembered that symbol and where it was in the position on that plate.
So this is a modernization, right? It's a good point, and the community needs to understand that this does not disrupt all the specialty plates, because those are a Red Sox plate, the Bruins, I'm talking specifically to Massachusetts, but every state has them, right? The Cape and Island, all those specialty plates and vanity plates, low number plates, those are easily recognizable. Cognitively, in the federal system of the highway, they don't go above 3, right? 495, 128. You'll never see a fourth letter. In the numeric system, it goes 1, 2, 3, and then it changes down, because that's how much we can understand. We can cognitively remember that and be able to retain it and retrieve that information. This brings the alphanumerics, which aren't being used properly, numbers that are not in a line, alpha, the letters that aren't spelling anything, and puts that in a format that we can then instantly, like you say, any culture, actually even in a rear view mirror, you're able to identify that. So
and
walk through this.
And people, say, well, wait a minute, we don't have stars, diamonds, all these things on our computer keyboard. That's right. But you don't need a special, and some people have tried to sidetrack this to knock it off center, say, oh, we would have to outfit everybody with new keyboards. No, use a standard computer keyboard that they have in every one of the vehicles.
Gary, that's a good point. Let me just stop you. The contrary to that is to say, when they issued the Red Sox plate or the Celtics plate, did they issue keyboard? They did not. They did not, of course not. But those are stacked characters, and it happens regularly. But it is quickly, that's when individuals and decision makers, and we see this, because this is a big paradigm shift. This has, in 120 years, we do want to do this, but in 120 years, we haven't modernized license plates. So this is big idea thinking, and it's going to take bold leadership to move this forward. And what are the dividends? Public safety, perhaps changing people's lives and protecting people. But it's quickly, individuals might look at the cost, or might look at, gee, we can't do this. They look for barriers as opposed to solutions. You have broken through with something. It makes perfect sense, but we have seen those barriers where individuals say, no, this is the best we can do. Well, it's not. It's not the best we can do. We can improve upon what we have. In 120 years, you look at 1903, look at the cars the Wright brothers flew their planes in 1903. Look at where transportation has come. Yeah. We need to focus on that 6x12, right? Real estate on the front of the car, and can we modernize that to save lives and protect people?
6 by 12. Remember, the plates used to be bigger, and the fonts were bigger. Now we're making them smaller and smaller, and we're putting peaches and oranges and horses and all that. But to go back to using a standard computer keyboard, because that's one of the very first arguments that people bring up that don't understand how the system works. Well, a Red Sox plate has an R over an S. Right. All the specialty plates, they call them stacked characters. And this follows, and it aligns with the best practices guide of AMVA, the American Association for Motor Vehicle Administrators, who put together a Bible, if you will, for a formatting that to make these all universally recognizable, work within a system that we can all understand, and this aligns with that, and we have a letter from that. But when the supposed study that was done by Massachusetts, they totally left that out. And because they wanted to cite, the people that were involved with that report wanted to kill it. But anyway, to go back here, so this would show there's a diamond in the third position. So you put D3, 4, D5. That's how it goes in. In fact, I have a parking ticket for an expired meter that followed my plate. It had, it read the stacked characters because it was a specialty plate. And same thing, when you take a look at the EZID logo that we use, there's a S, that means it's a star. It's in the 1, 2, 3, third position, so the S over a 3. And that's how the system aligns with what we do.
So in that example that you gave, Massachusetts might be looking at, why geometric, why these, you learn at a very young age, right? 3, 4 years old, you don't have to think about a circle. What is a square? When an eyewitness police will say, well, they'll pull up to an accident or a pedestrian hit and run and things of that nature. They'll say might be, for example, a black SUV and it had a political bumper sticker. It had a college decal. They see a logo. They say that's what they can connect with. They don't look at this 8 character alphanumeric. When your cognitive level spikes, right? When your cortisol level spikes, you can't remember that information, but you are able to remember a retrieval cue, right? There was like I say, a political sticker or maybe a military bumper sticker. They can get that. Well, that doesn't help the registry in any way. That doesn't help public safety retrieve that. We use symbols on a regular basis for instant communication on the highway.
Especially on the roads.
Exactly.
And what are we trying to identify? A vehicle that's on the road. So they're not going to say hospital located, and all that. They just put a symbol there.
What's interesting is that's international language right there.
Right.
Any culture, any language, you know exactly a railroad crossing. You know what this means, and you're able to instantly get that. You don't have to study it. While you can still keep, undistracted on the road, you're able to get that information.
Keep. There's a couple over here. Is there another one behind there? Yeah. All right. So you can see what's happening in other countries, how big they're getting, and how we're expanding. How would you prefer to have a symbol? In a heart, a diamond, a square, so that everybody in the world could identify, as opposed to another country like that.
So in this formatting in Massachusetts, you talk. There may be 6 or 7 retrieval cues that we probably would have to use. Now, for every state, it would be different. This would go across the country, depending upon the population. Right? Depending upon there's home rule here, each state would decide, but there's a format that would in fact change. Now, back in 1903, other states followed. It didn't take long for other states to say, yeah, we're going to do that license plate. We're gonna move forward and we're going to put them in, and over time, it moved right across the country. Well, now, 120 years later, it's time for Massachusetts to take the lead to say, we're going to improve upon that and we're going to modernize that. So this retrieval cue can show up anywhere along that formatting, right? And it's easily identifiable. And if you want to show the calculus of what that impact is, maybe show what that is in public safety and step the viewers through that.
Yeah. See, and a lot of people don't understand if somebody gets pulled over, by the police are not getting that information immediately. They send it to CJIS, the Criminal Justice Information System Division of the FBI, to make sure that isn't a wanted felon on a much larger scale. So you may have been swerving or whatever reason you were pulled over. They need to see if you're a much bigger fish, and then they take that information and they send it back to that law enforcement, and so a lot of people, are not aware of it. But CJIS was brought in at the very beginning of this to say, would this align with what is required in this country? And the gentleman from CJIS checked it out, said, this works, and would work on a national basis. And by the way, it's a good idea.
Sure. The Pioneer Institute gave it honorable mention.
For the better government competition, and
every step of the way. The problem is implementation, right? Big ideas, they take some bold leadership, but and what is this going to deliver public safety? Can you imagine some of the few cases that we talked about? But there are so many more that we'd like to think not only would be able to quickly respond, we might also be able to prevent. Individuals with these cars, these are crimes of opportunity. A hit and run accident is not planned. A pedestrian accident, an abduction, drunk driver, things of that nature, it is not planned out. And to be able to have that retrieval cue and information for public safety to rapidly respond, right? That's a tool for them, and it can change their ability to protect.
John Walsh said that he has this program, and he does things after the tragedy of his own son, Adam. And he said his job is to get the bad guys after they've done something. He says what we need is to have things in place to prevent it from happening in the first place. So what a lot of people don't realize here is not only does the symbol, universally recognizable symbol, give us that retrieval cue, it also adds mathematically to the number of combinations dramatically to the point where we can actually put fewer characters in. So I've got some math here in one of these, but when we were before, I can't remember which police organization, and when we tell you how many police organizations are involved, supporting this, one of the first questions we were asked was, where does law enforcement stand on this? We can't fit all the endorsements on there, but just to give you an idea, let's see, we have AAA, we have Arbella Insurance, the Mass Chiefs of Police, the New England Chiefs of Police, the Mass Sheriff's Department, the Mass Police, the District Attorneys Association, the major chiefs, the Fraternal Order of Police, Rhode Island Chiefs of Police, on and on, children's groups, Boston City Council, Worcester City Council, Springfield City Council. So, folks, this has been vetted. They've checked out the system, and they have written letters of endorsement. And let me show you what the math does. And when we were in front of one of the police groups, they said, well, give us an example. And I said, okay, let's say it was a blue SUV, and we had to try to identify, the information.
An eyewitness is able to
Right.
say, an eyewitness to an incident, whatever that is, scenario is, they're able to give some information.
Yeah, sometimes they get one character.
Sure.
And they get two. Well, let's do an example of only getting two. And we're a small state, relatively speaking. So six characters. So you've got a third of the information. On the six, you get two. Well, since mathematically we can reduce the number of characters, most plates in Massachusetts would be 4 or less characters.
Right.
All right. Now here's Massachusetts. Now here are even smaller states. Okay, New Hampshire and Vermont. So I didn't want to use a big, Texas, California, because that would skew it too much. So we're just comparing it even in smaller states. So
use in the formatting we have now, an eyewitness sees what? 2 characters?
2 characters. Say you got the number 25.
So if they identify a blue, that reduces the universe down.
9% blue.
SUV.
About 12.5% at the time we did this.
So that's reporting to the police.
Right.
And they said, gee, I was able to get 2 characters, 2-5, the last 2.
Okay, so that narrowed it down to about 12,000 cars.
So the 3 detectives that are working on this have 12,000 cars
right.
to look at.
Yeah,
that's in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and then in the even smaller states, over 1,100 in New Hampshire, and in Vermont, I'm sorry, about 1,200. And when but with the Easy ID plate, it narrowed it down to about 12 vehicles.
Same identifying information.
Same information.
Identified a blue SUV and got 2 characters, Diamond 5. Now with that information, they immediately know, law enforcement will know, it begins with the D3. So they're going to get a good portion of the plate. And it's one of how many cars?
It's one of about 12 vehicles.
So this is 1,000 times more powerful. With today's plate, it's 12,000. With an Easy ID plate, it's 12. Yeah. Gary, you're knocking on that person's door before they get home.
See, the reason, Jay, can you hand me that one right there? When we've gone to give presentations, they say, well, do you want to set up your camera, this and that, your projector and all that. I've been to so many business presentations, it takes forever to do that. Sometimes it doesn't work. So we went simple. Just like a license plate, simple. Sure. And we just made these informal placards here so we can do this, repeat it, etc. When abduction leads to the death of a child, 44% are dead within the first hour. 74% are dead within 3 hours. 91% are dead within 24 hours. These are statistics I've gotten from studies done by the National Transportation Association, etc. So every second is critical. So if you need to find that vehicle, the whole Amber Alert system, was put there. Why? Because our children are important to us. But if you can't glean that information to get it up there, and by the way, it takes 7 seconds to be able to look at that board and try to remember that information, which we already know we can't really remember. But to actually read all of those 6 characters, it typically takes 7 seconds while we're going 65, 70 miles an hour,
Right.
under that sign.
Even if it's on your phone, right? Even if it's on you're not going to, one song, one conversation, one phone call, and you will not remember. You'll remember if they're looking for, let's say, a red Mustang, but you're not going to be able to identify that marker, that information, and that's what's critically important.
Okay, so you have a moving vehicle, all right? What are you going to see there? Now, what happens if you're dyslexic, or you're looking through your rearview mirror? You're looking there. You're trying to find what's these become hieroglyphics. We can't remember when they're in the right orientation, let alone reversed. But that symbol is a universally recognizable symbol in any orientation.
Any child. Now you mentioned, and it is important, and we intersected on this because of child abduction and child safety, but the margins are much bigger, right? Whether it's drunk driving, road rage, pedestrian accident, the school bus driver, where it happens every day. We see this, the police are asking for your help. The automobile goes around while they're dropping off children, and the bus driver is not able to capture that information. What happens? Police have to follow that bus along the way and hopefully capture some individuals, as opposed to being able to instantly identify the perpetrators and be able to rectify and capture those.
And some people who want to come up with the argument will say, well, what they'll do is they'll go to a parking lot and they'll steal a plate and put it on theirs. Well, if a child is walking down the street and you have to go to a parking lot, that child is long gone. That's an opportunity that they have to seize that moment at the time. And when you talk about hit and runs, boom, it's done. Did you get that vehicle? Somebody just hit somebody in the crosswalk. How many times have we heard on the news? Anybody that can come up with information where we're looking for da-da-da-da-da-da.
Police are asking for the public's help. That is the biggest benefit, right? Being an engaged community, we put blindfolders basically on the community to identify a vehicle. And this concept is used regularly in business. Big companies will put their 800 number in a format so that you can understand it. 1-800-SBLI or 1-800-ARBELLA, all those things, so you can actually retain that and retrieve that at a time when you're going to make that call. Well, this would be able to put it in a format that we would be able to retain that and then provide that to the police.
Yeah, we talked about the Amber Alert system and how many millions of dollars that were put into that. This is the 1-2 punch with Amber Alert. And I want to mention something else here. Jay and I are here talking about this today because we've been living this this odyssey of being derailed, and we can talk about how this has been derailed. But we're here today as part of a documentary that some people want to put together, and I want to acknowledge my dear friend H.G.FASS, who has his own small production company, but he's a genius and such a solid person, and he's the man behind the camera on this, and I want to thank him from.
Yeah. So, really it comes down to this. When we talk about making a difference in modernizing, right? We've done this, that's what America does. We modernize things. We modernize in so many different ways. This has not been, the license plate has not been modernized, but the solution is there. It's being able to take those strong steps to change a paradigm and put public safety back in that formatting that's going to help all of us, from young children, so many cultures. I would say this, Gary. If you or a loved one needed help, if you or a loved one needed that formatting, we're in trouble. God forbid a child abduction, but a hit and run or a drunk driver. What system would you want to have in place? This alphanumeric or this system? One of 12,000 or one of 12?
You know,
The answer is simple.
I have a friend that was telling her 10-year-old son, this is gospel here. She just told me this the other day. She explained, he's 10 years old, and he says, if I'm abducted, I hope they have this system in place.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move to this, because many times you have to follow the money, right? Now, not only is this a good idea, let's talk about money, because we talk about the finance of this. Sadly, it's not enough to just have an ingenious idea to improve. So, when we look at this, Massachusetts ranks the lowest on tolling, right? Being able to recognize our plates, so the reflectivity and things of that nature. So that would strengthen the identification. It's sad, but we have to also talk about, it's not enough to have a good idea, you have to be able to pay for it. So in insurance costs, being able to identify, it would actually control or maybe downwardly adjust insurance costs, because the responsible party would now be more readily identifiable. There would also be an uptick in using these symbols creatively. And then maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, vanity plates are, it's a cash machine for the states.
Sure.
In Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it's $100 per year. When we get our regular plate, registration back, it's every 2 years, and it's a minimal amount of money. But on the vanity plates, they said if you want to have something fancy on there, even though it's the same plate, they're not giving you a new plate. It's the same information. They're just putting a new sticker on it. It's like $100.
Doesn't that catch your eye though when you're going down the driveway? You've seen rope, or you see letters that are spelled out. They use something that connects to them. Maybe it might even be their initials.
They call it a vanity plate for a reason.
But isn't that something you remember that?
Of course.
But we don't have.
Or
it
a
now.
Red Sox plate with a Red Sox logo.
Yeah.
On
what could we do?
So with using symbols creatively, here's just a few examples. A rock star, diamond girl, square one, big white. We can use letters and so you could have rock star. You could keep changing the symbol.
Sure.
You can, and the other thing is we can make rock ROKK.
Yeah.
You can spell it all different ways. And that becomes the amount of revenue. Even if we started, let people use the symbols on this. If they want to prove how the system would work and that money's rolling in, even if we just started with that. But there's a reason, Jay, why, and now we're going to get into some dicey area here.
Before you jump to that, I just want to say that so the listeners understand, again, we use that stacked characters. In this example, he put the diamond in the first position. The S, the rock star, same, 5th position. So the formatting stays the same. It's consistent, and it's just a learning process. People sometimes are adverse to change. Well, this is a change that's actually required.
Yeah, see, here's like the example of the Red Sox plate.
Sure.
I mean, when you see that, or the Bruins plate,
Yes.
as in any states, and here's your stack characters. That's for the Red Sox, because we don't have a Red Sox logo on our keyboards.
Yeah.
You don't need it, and that's why AMVA, wrote this letter of support. This all the registrars around all the 50 states, they have an organization. It's called AMVA, American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, and their Bible says how this aligns with the best practices, and there it is. And that was left out of that quote unquote review that was done.
So what's the pushback? Well, why? We've been at this for 10 years. What was some of that pushback?
20, Jay.
I've been at it 10.
Yeah. Actually, north of 20 now.
Yeah.
And the pushback is, there's a company we're gonna have to talk about it. There's a company who has just fined $10.3 billion for Forever Chemicals and what it's done to the society. And that company happens to have a 3 and an M. It's called 3M. So now what we're going to do is we're going to give you our opinion of what has happened. You can make up your own decision, but we have a lot of information to corroborate this.
Well, we have real world experience. We were flown out to Minneapolis, St. Paul, the two of us, to say, could you give us a demonstration of the easy ID?
We want to understand this better.
We were put in a room with about 25 engineers and subject matter experts from 3M. And why 3M? They sell all the reflective equipment, right?
They provide virtually all the materials that have to do with making license plates.
Exactly. So they have the large market share of license plate manufacturing.
It's a monopoly.
So yeah, it is a monopoly. But so they have a vested interest in this, let's say this. And we went out to explain to them this formatting. Now, this in no way goes against really their business practice. We wanted to marry what they are doing as far as selling the reflective material with public safety, right? We wanted those two. The alignment makes perfect sense. And why wouldn't any company want to put themselves next to public safety? It makes perfect sense.
And they even said, what if we were to take this over? And we said, oh my God, be our guest, right? But you have to do something with it. And he said, well, how do we monetize it? Well, it's free.
Right.
I've signed an affidavit that I will not take a single penny ever for that. And I submitted that to they said, well, we don't do free. We're a corporation,
You're reminding me of, that's what people, one of the things where people, back in people's minds, whether legislators or certainly a business institution say, what's in it for you? Have you copyrighted this? They can't get their mind around the fact that we're doing this because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. At the time, 3 young kids. I'm on the road. My wife's on the road. Everybody is on the road in their vehicle. It is a public safety benefit that certainly makes sense.
Yeah. So why would they be against it? Because any change out makes, they're going to get, sales are going to go up. Well, our understanding is that they showed us their new technology that they were working on that would put the information on a barcode behind the reflective material that the naked eye could not see. But their very expensive new system that every state would have to put in place at all the tolls, you'd have to get their very expensive system to cut down on what they call leakage. They estimate it's about 5% of the vehicles that go through the tolls do not get, they don't get the toll from them. So that leakage, with their system, they figured they could recover millions of dollars and justify the cost of implementing their new advanced technology.
So that goes against, monetizing, and really what the plate is monetizing, because they think it's a profit center as opposed to public safety. That's not, we think both of them can exist.
Exactly.
Of course, if you're responsible for a toll, we should be able to have that, but that barcode that they want to have, and we said simply, move forward with your barcoding, but implement this as well, and we'll put those two technologies together, and yes, you can do this, take this.
Yeah, the license plate reading equipment can get that information, but we're asking for the public.
Exactly.
We don't have the eyes, to do that. That's why you need their very expensive system. And they have spent, from what I understand in my reading the articles, they spent over $1 billion on this to sell their very expensive system. But as somebody else who worked for another license plate reading equipment company said, Gary, this is going to cut down on that because of the larger fonts, the more substantial. When you have a 1 or an L or a 7, it's so hard for the readers, and especially if there's any dirt on there, whatever, to get that information. These are robust and all this, and it cross-references. It tells you about that symbol twice. You see it, but they also say D3. So when it picks up like a Red Sox plate, it picks up that stacked characters, and that it cross-validates it.
For the electronic, but their formatting, the public cannot see that. It's an invisible.
It's an invisible.
So
that does nothing for the public. That's just a revenue thing. But this does it for free, which was not the intended. We want to empower
I know.
The society from children. Most abductions take place within, I think it's about a half a mile from a school. Who are the likely ones to see that? Yeah. And they said, well, how are we going to educate them? The Massachusetts Safety Officers League said this is a blessing. They go into the schools and talk about safety for the kids. We would have car bingo. We would and we would teach the kids to talk to one another. They're typically walking home like in pairs. What did you see? What did I see? And you talk about it, and you validate it with one another, and you lock that in, and now you have something to report.
Sure.
And when every second is critical.
You're empowering, young children, cultures, diversity, being able to identify. We overlook the license plate. We just see it as there, but we don't really see it's hidden in plain view, right? We don't really even recognize that because it really doesn't deliver any return, any dividends. We know we've kind of adapted to the fact that it's not something I can remember, so we kind of overlook that. We try to see something else. But you reminded me of the fact that we worked a long time trying to educate decision makers and legislators on this, and their one response back to us was, "What's in it for you?" And they were stunned with the fact we said, "Nothing." Nothing. They couldn't understand that.
Yeah, right. That's not how things work on Beacon Hill. And so they are paying, at the time when we looked it up, they were paying a lobbyist.
Yeah.
Okay, $45,000 a year to block this legislation. This is our understanding, and we looked it up, and we've heard, we keep hearing these things, follow the money, follow the money. So to stay under the radar as much as they can, they send $22,500 of it to one lobbying firm, and $22,500, this is at the time, it's probably more now, to another lobbying firm, but it's the same guy. So half of it goes in his left pocket, the other half goes in his right pocket. So they're trying to keep it under the radar that at the time we're paying $45,000 to that lobbyist to block this legislation.
Yeah. How
many times have we been in front of the Transportation Committee? And they know who to lock up. And it's the co-chairman on the House side, because the House has the majority of the votes in every one of these committees.
Right.
And if you can lock up that chairman, who you do fundraisers for and all that, he's the one that can block this.
Yeah, and why?
And why? Because you're serving a corporation whose profits are more important than children's lives. And what's in it for us, Jay? We save one child.
Yeah.
We are the richest men in the world.
Yeah. No.
What value do you put on your children's lives?
Your life, your husband,
It's
your
priceless.
wife,
Anybody.
your grandchildren, your own, right? Drunk driving, hit and run, pedestrian accident, stolen vehicle.
If you see something, say something.
Suspicious
Homeland
vehicle.
Security.
Yeah, in front of you, all kinds. So this is now an effort with Howard's help to try to move this. We really are making a push to try to make this a reality. Two guys can't do it alone, though. We'll not be able to do this alone. We need some help.
We need some organizations to get behind this. We need some philanthropists to get behind this. And again, we're not getting paid for this.
Yeah.
I started writing a book about it, and I'm going to ask you, Jay, if you'll consider co-authoring it with me, and we'll put this together. But this is about our trials and tribulations and the Odyssey, and to a person that you explain this to, they say, why would anybody be against this? Why would anybody,
Change. People resist change, right?
No.
They do.
But there's
Overwhelming evidence, right?
Right.
Yeah, I go back to our introduction is, let's concede the obvious. The system that we have right now is broken 1% of the time. So that
less than 1%.
Yeah.
We're being generous.
So you don't fix a problem unless you know there is a problem, right? There is a problem, and now we have to say, are we going to get stuck? Are we going to become bystanders? Or are we going to actually do something about it? In 1903, Massachusetts said, we're going to do something about it. And then we have to say, okay, in 2023, is Massachusetts going to do something? Because we've proven the obvious. We've proven what
And so
this
is the
is.
New England College of Optometry,
All of them.
and with a nationally acclaimed study.
Federally, across, and again, each state gets to do this, but we need individuals with some advocacy and some ability to get behind this and help us. We're not lining our pockets. There's no copyright to this, but it just makes perfect sense.
And by the way, Kathy Curran had done a story
She's a reporter, an investigative reporter on a Boston station.
and did an expose on 3M
Right.
interfering with this. They showed the plates on the 6 o'clock news, the 11 o'clock news. I remember Ed Harding saying, God, this makes such sense. And what happened? Nothing.
Right.
Because, you know, that legislator, that key legislator, the House co-chairman, first it was Wagner, now it's William Strauss. And we're calling him out and calling out 3M. And we hope you folks will get in touch with them. We'll put some information on all of this. But, you know, we're trying to get the bad guys, the monsters. Monsters don't have horns. We see movies where they have horns. They look like all of us. And sometimes those monsters are wearing very expensive suits and interfering with children's lives. How many people, how many children, how many people, you know, they're talking about trafficking. Do you know how worldwide trafficking, how many thousands of people are being abducted and put into trafficking? Yep. And where do they get? They showed there was a story. It showed a guy going through at a parking garage. He had the girl's arm and trying to pull her through the window. Yeah. It's everywhere.
Yeah, the examples are endless. But you know, let's just say this. I would say the legislators, the decision makers, to 3M, we want to work with. We don't want to combative. Combative doesn't get us to a solution. We want to work with people, but the people have to be opened up to the people who are in a position to make a difference, to work with us on this, to take this, to implement this, refine it. The concept makes sense, but you know what you have to do? We've studied it, we've seen it, but then you have to do, right? In order, it has to be an action item, implementation, right? Something of a big idea, it needs action. We need them on board. We don't want to make this confrontational. We have to make it where they're engaged with us, and we want to be part of the solution and make them part of the solution. Right now, they've been obstructionary in that they put a dollar cost to this, and it was a big number. And when we went through and looked at this, new keyboards for everyone, all the different pieces, and it said, this is just a way to say no. Right. This is just another way to put a dollar. But if you look at that number, you say, what a bargain that would be, because quite frankly, the hundreds of millions of dollars that is being spent now in public safety. I go back to our earlier statement. The Molly Bish case is the most expensive and longest in Massachusetts history. If that could have been solved immediately, imagine, and Molly would be here.
How many hit and runs? How many times do they put something out to the public, a plea to the public, and how much manpower, women power, you know, law enforcement trying to get involved with the community, help us to find this perpetrator, yeah. You know, and get this person off the road and be responsible.
So let's get down to, we've kind of talked about this, the solution, and we've said people help. How do they get in touch with us?
Well, there's going to be information on this. First of all, on our website, we have what did I do with that? The card I took that down. We'll put that back up. But in the meantime, it's on one of these. But I want to mention something else. I want to really get your attention. Jay had mentioned Holly Peranian. She was a 10-year-old girl who was abducted in Massachusetts.
Sturbridge, yeah.
Yeah. And at the time, another 10-year-old girl wrote a compassionate letter to the family of Holly. and expressing, her condolences. And I mean, a 10-year-old to do that. And she included a picture of her sitting on her mother's lap with her family. And actually, here is a copy of that exact letter written by none other than Molly Bish, who 6 years later, the same thing happened to her.
She wrote a letter to say, I hope they find you. I hope we meet someday. I hope we're able to talk. 2 10-year-olds talking to one another, at the time. And imagine that connection, that emotional connection of
10-year-old, right?
Had the empathy to reach out to a family who knew was facing a tragedy. And the Peranian family remembered, they kept that letter. And when Molly went missing, they retrieved that and sent that to Molly Bish to say, look at this.
Well, we're going to on B-roll. We're going to put the information up because it's on one of these placards here, and it has all the information for. Okay. But we'll put that up there, and as well as the the endorsements and all that. So, there is an ask here. We need your help, and.
Sure. Yeah. No. We want to, what we'd like to do? We'd like to finish the job. We've put this out. We've connected. We want to see this as a reality. Our job is not done until it is implemented and completed. And
one state. In other states, when we had gone to, and by the way, you never heard the word frenemy before, but it was associated with that same company. And maybe we're going to edit some of that information out. I don't know, but we'll see after reviewed and have an attorney look at it because the world is so litigious nowadays.
Yeah, but
we'll see what happens with all that.
We've been to Pennsylvania. We have been across this country on this. I know we've gone,
and they love it, and every state loves it.
Everyone shakes it because that is wonderful. That's a great idea. But people get busy and they get distracted, and there's all kinds of reasons to say no. Right? There's all kind because
they're all afraid to be the first one in.
Exactly right. They don't want to break through and be that bold leader. They don't want to change that paradigm.
Because it's a state jurisdiction, and they can't legislate that, on a national level.
But what haven't we modernized since 1903? You can't look at. We've even modernized our currency since big issues. Everything has been modernized. It's time for the license plate, vehicle identification for the health, the safety, the quality of life, the enhancement, the surveillance. This isn't Big Brother. This is we're being able to protect one another.
Say something.
We're to protect one another, not that grainy, car that you see on the 6 o'clock news. If you recognize this, that doesn't help anyone. That doesn't empower anyone. Eyewitness to be able to say, I have the plate, get it to law enforcement, and they're able to then, retrieve, capture, apprehend an individual. We're all safer because of that.
And I hear people say, there's cameras everywhere. Really? When Holly was taken off that country road, Molly was taken off of that beach, in a wooded area. These are crimes of opportunity, and these are people that can hold elite jobs. You don't know who that monster is, and they're calculating, they're clever, and they know how to defeat the system.
Yeah, and there are cameras, don't get me wrong, but you know what? 3 days later, the police are looking at the Home Depot or the Bank of America camera, and days have gone by. Maybe weeks have gone by. Time is precious on some of these things. You have to be able to respond, whether it's a pedestrian accident, a hit and run, be a drunk driver, you want to be able to instantly. That's where public safety and law enforcement is most effective, is to instantly respond. Time is of the essence on a number of these things. So to rely on some cameras after the fact.
Yeah, like we said, when abduction leads to the death of a child, 44% are dead within the first hour. 74% are dead within 3 hours. 91% within 24. These are national statistics. Folks, if your child or your spouse or your neighbor, your friend, anybody, another human were abducted, which system would you want? So thank you, Jay,
Yeah, no. Oh, for sure. Our journey continues. Our journey continues.
Thank you, Howard.